Alright, howdy everybody. Welcome back to Tap Comics Pressing. In this video, what I want to do is start an installment where we, kind of start a work on a book from dry cleaning through pressing, put it all together, and then see how it turns out at the end when it's back from CGC. So for our inaugural video of that series here, we're going to choose this copy of Incredible Hulk number 182. This is a key issue because it features the third part in the epic Hulk 180, Hulk 181, and Hulk 182 series, where the very popular character Wolverine is first introduced. In this issue, Wolverine really only appears on this first page, and after that helicopter flies away, the rest of the issue is pure Hulk. But thankfully to us, we do have the key panels here featuring the Claude character himself. So with this issue, the first thing I'm going to do is just take a quick peruse and try to characterize some of the key defects and maybe come up with a good grade. And so looking around the comic, as I've encouraged you to do, I can see right off the bat that this is a mid-grade copy. It features a number of creasing and spine line. And if we flip it over, we can see that there's some significant damage, maybe a little bit of a tear up here, printer crease along there. And so with that, there is a lot of work to be done on this issue to make it up to its prime best as it can be eye appeal. Even with all the work we put in, though, we're going to notice a number of defects. So right along here, there is a large corner crease, and so that will be a very significant defect that will likely contribute to a low overall grade. We'll notice that there's a number of creases along here. So there's one right here, and then there's several on the corner, and another one that starts up here. And so overall, lots of corner creasing on this book. If we take a peek down the spine, we have a number of spine ticks, and some of these you'll notice are getting to be quite large, so they start to come in off the corner. And this one here, you can start to see a lot of white through, which indicates it might be starting to be more of a spine tear instead of a simple spine tick. And if we look at the corner, we'll notice a significant amount of rounding and blunting on both spine corners. So if we flip it over, we will notice that there's a good amount of material that needs to be cleaned off of here, as well as what looks to be some staining in this area, so a good amount of yellowing. This is another crease that likely corresponds to the one on the front, as well as a lot of smaller things that need to be cleaned off of here. So, and then following our general guideline, what we're going to do is open this up, 1, 2, and then right off the bat, we notice something very important right here, which is these pages are folded over, and so we want to straighten them out as best we can right off the bat. Just unfold that. So might have to come back and do that a little bit later. Those are probably going to need to be ironed out because it looks like there's going to be several of them in here. I need a little bit of a corner straighten. Oop. I really want to fold over on me. All right, let's just stick at the moment for some page counting. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to look for the Marvel value stamp here. 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Here's the all-important Marvel value stamp being intact. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and hopefully our last page there is 16. So at least the interior looks complete, and the Hulk books of this era, as well as most Marvel books, are notorious for having that Marvel value stamp removed, and so it's a really good sign to be able to see that one intact on this book. All right, so interior looks complete, even though it has some folded over pages here, at least some of which have now been unfolded, so we'll check that out. All right, so looking for things to dry clean, right in here there is a lot of debris, a lot of gunk in here. It looks pretty good in this region, so I'm not going to worry about that. This is on yellow, so we're going to want to be very diligent if we decide to approach that. You'll notice that there's some surface wear along here. It's not quite a crease, but it's there's a little bit in the Hulk logo, as well as some maybe up along the top. So all in all, I think that this book is likely going to max out probably at a 4.0, a very good grade due to the creasing, which we see on all sides, but thankfully the interior is complete, and I think we'll be able to give it a nice facelift and get out a lot of these pressable defects. So let's just get started on the back here. So this is kind of all the dry cleaning equipment I showed in the other videos. So we have a cotton round, my micro eraser, my eraser pen, the Mr. Clean sheets, and the important eraser bit grabber here, the Swiffer sheet. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I tend to start down the spine with a little bit of the staple or the pen exposed. And, you know, to me, I'm always going to move laterally. You should hopefully see my fingers kind of spread and splayed. And I'm always going to try to keep the eraser between my fingers. I personally find that that's very important because I don't want to rub in a direction that causes a tear, and I'm using my fingers to kind of stabilize the comic on the surface here as we go. And you'll notice this is taking a little bit. This is some pretty good stuck-on goo, and it's not really coming off right off the bat. So with that, you know, we could move to the Mr. Clean sheets, and we'll probably do that here in a minute. And you'll notice that the eraser debris as it comes off is dark, which is really nice. So that's an indication we're at least getting somewhere. And I'm trying my very best to stop before I get to that black dotted pattern that goes down the back. But even, you know, looking at this here, we can see quite a noticeable improvement as I make some progress down the spine. And now this area you might want me to put some more pressure and force on. I'm actually gonna call that about as good as I'm gonna get it because I can see that the paper is damaged, the gloss is damaged there, and I definitely don't want to cause any more damage by continuing to rub over it where it's starting to fray. And so I think that's about as good as that's gonna get right along there. And keep going down here to the corner. I often start in the back cover right along the spine. That to me is the indication if a book has been cleaned. All right, now so here on the corner, I'm gonna stroke very carefully off the corner, and I'm never gonna go from the edge onto the comic book. So we're only gonna go from the comic book to the edge as we go that way. You definitely don't wanna catch it going back and cause a tear. So definitely be very careful around the edges. Right in here we can see a little bit of crud. Be able to get that off. Now some of the videos and other people online will tell you never to take an eraser over color. I'm okay with it. The question is you don't want to jam down and rub really hard. Instead you want to kind of make light, general, soft, sweeping motions. And if you do that, you should be able to at least give some of this a little bit of a polish without taking off color or ink. The gloss is there, and so the trick is never to push through the gloss or rub on the gloss. Now you'll notice this is crudding up, and that'll happen. If you decide it crubs up, what I do is I keep a little bit of electrical tape, or sorry, the masking tape or painter's tape off camera, and I'm just gonna rub that on that area and try to buff the eraser so that it goes back to being nice and white before I hop onto a new area. And so you'll notice again I'm going between my fingers. That's kind of my go-to technique. And then as I get to the edge, you'll notice I slow down, and I'm only going to go across the edge. I'm never going to go this way, always just this way, side by side. So nothing here too crazy. And, you know, with dry cleaning, it's really not a game of trying to get it all. I try to aim for maybe 95%. I find if I try to get anything past that last 5%, the risk of doing damage goes way, way up, and the eye appeal of the book goes up very little, and the grade goes up 0. And so at least to me, you're kind of looking for about 95%. You don't want to send it back completely filthy, but don't feel obligated to get every molecule of dirt or grime off of a book. It's only going to cause problems. So you want to get as much as you can. And even though I'm moving vertical right now, I'm staying very clear of that edge when I get my eraser there. So that's looking pretty good. In here, I'm going to take my micro eraser out and try to get some of the stuff that's between the text in here, especially back over here. Now this is a big patch of yellowing, so there's not any amount of rubbing I'm going to be able to do to get that, but I can take the eraser along the edge of the text without hitting the text. So that's at least going to be part of what I'm doing there. And this eraser tends to leave eraser residue wherever I erased, and so I'm going to take this eraser now and go just very gently over that space, just to try to make sure I'm erasing all my erasures. All right, and this edge right here where we had those really deep pieces, that is getting a little bit intense, and I've already given it a pretty good eraser. So this is where I'm going to take now my Mr. Clean sheet. What I'm going to do is just slightly draw off those edges. I don't want to go too heavy because you'll end up going through the gloss, but I just want to give it a nice rub along there. Okay, now you can notice there's all this debris, and so every few minutes it's a good idea to take the Swiffer sheet, and I'm just going to wipe that comic surface, and then I'm going to gently pick the comic up and wipe under it and just get all of that out of the area, because I want to be able to get as much clear as possible, because again, you need 100% of that to be removed before you go into the press. So it already looks significantly better, but you can see that there's still some work to do. The other thing that's nice about removing the eraser bits is it does give you a little bit of a clean slate in terms of where to focus a little bit more effort. And again, just trying to aim for that 95% good mark. And you'll notice this takes a bit. It's definitely not a fast process. And it definitely takes some patience. Usually I'll put on a podcast or an audiobook or some music in the background. It seems to keep me entertained. I know a lot of people find this to be quite tedious. It is very tedious. I find it relaxing after I get going on a book, though. So if I have a nice big stack of books, I'll clear off a couple of hours just to sit up here and jam out. Now the reds and yellows, I'm going to be very careful with, because you will notice it if you pull the color out on those. And again, I'm using my hands to anchor the book, and I'm trying to make sure I'm only moving along that edge, not up and down it. Now in here, we're going to want to be a little bit more careful. Back in here. This corner might just give a little bit of a Mr. Clean too. Whatever's on here appears to not want to come off very well. All right, like I've already said, we're not going to try to go for 100%, so that is about where we're going to be on that one. Some things do not clean off with the dry cleaning, and so whatever is left up there is going to be in that category. I'll take it now this way. Now this open edge corners here are where I think people run into the most problems. So my trick for that is to take the Mr. Clean sheet and put my thumb down and just stroke a few times directly towards the corner. And you can see that that does a pretty good job of cleaning that corner relative to the rest of the stuff around it. And it saves me the trouble of having to rub my eraser right around that corner. Because you'll notice I can go here along an open edge, and I can go here along the open edge. But right in here, I've got two edges and there's no way for me to secure them both. And so that's where using this sheet right on the corner and just pulling gently off the corner, I think makes a really big difference. And since I've started doing that, I've cut down the amount of times I've snagged or felt bad about pulling a little bit on a corner. And so that's okay. This, by the way, is a printer crease. You'll notice again it moves from left to right over the comic. It has kind of a goofy shape and at least doesn't look like it was initially color breaking. There's another one right here. So those are printer creases. Again, just slow and steady here wins the race. Not a very fast eye-dropping technique. But with all of the other things that other people have recommend online, I still find the eraser, while it's slow and steady, leads to the best overall results while risking the least damage to the comic book. It's definitely tried and true, and I really like these eraser pens. Oop, look at that, broke off. That happens. It just means we put too much time, and you can see how worn down that tip edge there is. So just click out a little bit more and get going. Nothing crazy there. All right. Gonna give it a good wipe. With the wipes, I always go from the comic off the comic. You'll notice I'm not ever going to stroke from the outside into the comic. It's always from the comic off the comic, and then I always pick up the space underneath. You might be curious why I'm comfortable picking up a comic like that without a big support in it. I found if I put a backer board in the comic while I clean it, I just end up getting eraser bits inside the comic from the cleaning, and so I don't like doing that. And for a comic like this, the spine is already quite stressed, and I'm not really doing any damage. Carefully, gently picking it up in the middle to it. So here's one of those places again. I'm going to very gently go over the text, and I put my eraser out so I can have it on a little bit more oblique of an angle and get a little bit more of a glide while I'm doing that. And you can see I'm not really picking up any black ink while I do that. Now, if you put a lot of pressure on, or if you rub it for an extended period of time, you're going to start to do that. But again, the goal here is not to get every bit of dirt from between those words. It's to get most of it and just make it look a little bit better. And right here we can see there's a big rub, and so I'm just going to try to take my eraser across that line just enough to hide that it was there. I don't need to get every little bit of it off, but just enough. There we go. And all of this is going to be that staining I called out initially, so we'll see if we can treat that, but at least at the moment, we're not going to be able to dry clean it off. Right, wipe that down, wipe down the area underneath, make sure I'm getting as much of it as possible. One more wipe down from the middle out. I try to start at about 60 or 75% and go kind of off the comic in the other direction. So now this looks significantly better to me. You can notice that there's still a bunch of discoloration up here that did not dry clean out. There's still some schmutz in here. Maybe we can try to get that a little bit better, but I don't think it's gonna go. The wear along this spine tick we kind of intentionally skipped, But in general, it looks like a much more presentable book, having most of that dark kind of dirt and ink transfer removed. So going back to the cover here, this is where I'm going to be very careful, kind of rolling across these word boxes, and I'm actually going to get my micro eraser out here and try to go on some of these darker spots in the word bubble. Sounds good. There's a bunch down here. I'm going to draw your attention to in this bubble. And I'm going to start with the micro eraser. That way when I go past with the larger one, again, I'm going to buff kind of some of the residue off. The residue just kind of looks like streaks caused. And you don't want that streaking. CGC will call that out. It's only happened to me once, but it's not something I want to repeat. All right, now this bit on the yellow, it makes me a little nervous. So I'm going to start by just gently as possible rubbing that, and I'm looking to see if I have any yellow. I'm going to take my cotton round and just rub over it and see. It feels smooth, so it doesn't feel like there's goo on it. It doesn't feel like there's any debris. I don't have any yellow on the cotton round, which is good. Again, I'm not looking to get all of this off. I'm just looking to make it look a little bit better. Again, if I look at that eraser, it's mostly dark, but I think if I rub it anymore, I'm going to start to get some yellow. So there might be a very small smidge of yellow on there. So I think that's best left as is. Go over here, try to go under the Hulk's feet, along the spine. Be very careful around the staples if they're sticking out like that. You definitely don't want to rub across them and cause any damage to the staples. This one also fouls pretty quick underneath, so it commonly needs to get just rubbed off screen to try to get some of that crud off, so that when I come back I have a kind of eraser surface to actually work with instead of just a bunch of crud on the bottom of the eraser. Because it's so much smaller, it cruds up pretty quick. All right, so let's just give this a little bit of a very, very light rub there. Nothing too dramatic, not even trying to do a whole lot. You can see there might be a little bit of a yellow on there from earlier, but that's about it. Should go over that. This is a little bit of a tear, a crease, so that's not dirt. All right, and then up here in the 25 box and along the Marvel Comics, there's not a lot there. I'm going to skip this 100% because of all the creasing. I don't want to accidentally break a chunk off. So that would be there. There's a little bit here in the Marvel M that I think we can pick up. Maybe a little bit here in the 25-cent box. It doesn't really make sense for me to go a whole lot more than that, particularly with this being a already mid-grade issue. We're just going to end up doing more damage up there than it's worth. So to me that looks like a dry cleaned book, and we'll call this step 1 of the journey here for this Incredible Hulk 182. So thank you for watching, and I'll continue posting on this one as it goes through a little bit of a whitening to try to address the areas on the back here, as well as make the cover pop a little bit more, and then eventually a good press, and then hopefully we'll be able to send that to CGC. All right, hi everybody, welcome back. So this is an intermediate video here now on the same Hulk 182. You can see it has the same diagonal creasing and edge wear and corner damage. This is one book that I had previously dry cleaned. This is after 2 treatments of the blue LED and peroxide whitening. So this would be bled overlay for the people familiar with the terminology. You can see it's quite a bit whiter, and the white spots and the color kind of pops a little bit more. More importantly though, if we flip it over, we can see that a lot of that really dark discoloration that's over here now is kind of cleaned up. What I will caution you about is we're not done yet, we're not out of the woods. On occasion with those kind of yellow stains that were over here, after you press them, sometimes they come back. And I think the reason for that is that they're oil stains and they're just sliding around between the paper fibers. That is, we're not truly bleaching it away, we're just moving it. The other thing is, if it is residual oil, oil discolors when you heat it up, and it's quite possible that just the process of reheating it, we're actually air oxidizing a little bit more of the oil and generating a little bit more yellow color that wasn't there before. And so I'm still a little concerned about this area, but in general, I'm quite pleased with how the book came out from the whitening. I know we struggled to dry clean some of these really intense dark areas, and now after the book comes out of the blue LED box, I might try to touch up a couple of these rough spots here. You don't want to do the blue LED treatment first. You always want to make sure you're dry cleaning first before you do any other work. You'll also notice that the book does have a slight wave and crinkle to it. That's normal coming out of the blue LED treatment with peroxide. What you will get is, after a press, it should smooth out quite nicely. This is kind of a normal level of that kind of waving or rippling, and you can see that kind of here on the edge. If I stand it up, you get a little bit of a wave pattern. That's just normal because you've put a wet overlay on it, and that gets the paper wet, and then as that overlay dries, the paper dries, and it kind of crinkles as it does that. But overall, much better eye appeal. And so from here, we're going to go on into the final press. All right, here's our Hulk 182, fresh out of the press, and as always, it's in the full back Mylar. You can see it's the same copy that we got that deep creasing up top and the big creasing down here on the bottom. And so, you know, again, it's never going to be a high grade issue with those defects. There is that light staining on the back. But all in all, I think it presents a lot better. Certainly the colors are a lot more vibrant, and hopefully this book will be enjoyed in its current glory. And so with that kind of takes care of this case study here on a Hulk 182 dry cleaning and press and whatnot. And so hopefully you've gotten some value out of the video. Please give me a like, thumbs up, subscribe, etc.